welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts, and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Gift Wrap, and with me today, all nicely wrapped up with a pretty bow on top, is my good friend Matt Hunter. Say hi!
Oh boy, Santa Claus came for real! And Christmas in July even.
Oh yes, because we recorded this one in July, but in any case, just a few bits of info to get out of the way. So as mentioned, this is Gift Wrap, released on the 16th of February 1952. It had a Blue Ribbon reissue sometime in 1960. It's the 641st in the series, and it's directed by Friz Freleng. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 2 DVD set, but they did a much better remaster for the Looney Tunes Platinum Collection Volume 2 Blu-ray set, if perhaps it's a little bit on the darker side, but hey, it still looks pretty good to my eyes anyway. Now, in case you haven't seen this one, sadly I can't show you the full thing here on YouTube due to copyright, but hey, it's Christmas Day, and Sylvester is excited for his present, which is a rubber mouse. Not happy, he sees Granny's present, which of course is Tweety, what else did you expect? And he tries to take the present for his own to no avail. And chaos ensues, as a result, of course.
Suffering succotash! What a present!
But we actually have a few bits of trivia here. So first of all, this is the first Friz Freleng short with Irv, hopefully I pronounce this correctly, Irv Wyner, W-Y-N-E-R, as background artist, who takes over for Paul Julian, who is now over at UPA.
Paul Julian and his work for the Freleng cartoons in the late 40s and early 50s is amazing. Just an incredible painter. And he loved these old Victorian-looking houses and just this certain style that he had. And it carried over to UPA. If you look at some of the stuff he did, The Telltale Heart, for example, it was just brilliant. And Irv Wyner takes over here, and it's certainly competent. It's not a whole departure, really. And in fact, I really like the opening where there's an effect of lights on the Christmas tree, where it goes from night to morning. I really like that look of it. And he used a lot of red, like this red carpet and this pink wallpaper I'm looking at here. But yeah, he stuck with him for a while. I don't know. Wyner did anyway. I don't know much about him, but it's fine.
It gets the job done. It really does.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting first, though, because I've noticed this doing things in chronological order. Now, it is possible I may have this wrong if, say, a voice credit was misidentified earlier on or whatever, but based on what I'm reading in regards to Keith Scott's book, who did the wonderful book regarding all of the voice acting credits, but it appears that this is the first Dawes Butler credit in a Looney Tunes short. He does the narrator in the beginning.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
Yeah, he'd be more well known for his work at Hanna-Barbera, like Huckleberry Hound, Huckleberry Hound.
Huckleberry Hound, which that voice was based on apparently a neighbor that he had. And he was from, I believe it was North Carolina, and he had this sort of accent. He started using it for a character in a Tex Avery cartoon. It was the Southern Wolf who went up against Droopy. And then, of course, he eventually turned that into Huckleberry Hound for Hanna-Barbera. But you were telling me that in the early 50s here, he was having trouble getting work, and so he hand wrote letters to the heads of all the cartoon studios.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden started getting work, and apparently it worked because all of a sudden he was everywhere. He was at Lance, he was at Warner Brothers, he was at MGM. I'm not even sure he didn't pop up at Disney every once in a while. And of course, later on, when TV came about, he was the principal voice at Hanna-Barbera, and he also did a lot of stuff for Jay Ward as well. Truly one of the great voice actors of all time.
Oh, exactly right. And funnily enough, because Mel Blanc obviously does Sylvester and Tweety here, he would actually replace Mel Blanc briefly as Barney in the Flintstones during season 2 after Mel Blanc has his near fatal accident. So I could do a whole video on Dawes Butler pretty much.
Sure. And then here we get a character too in Granny with B. Benaderet. And I don't think B. Benaderet gets enough appreciation. June Foray took over the role. And she claimed that she didn't realize that somebody else had originated that role. And I have to call BS on that because I can't imagine she couldn't have been aware of that.
Mm.
But either way, I can't say that one was really better than the other. It was what it was. And Bea Benaderet moved on to other things. She worked in television a lot and wasn't doing cartoons anymore. And so June Foray was the natural replacement and did a fantastic job and did it until the end of her life. I'm going to say she took over like 54 or 55, and she did it until as recently as, when did she pass away? 2018, I think it was. It ended up working well for Ray, but Benederet's granny is funny. And around this time, Friz Freleng used her in not just the Sylvester and Tweety cartoons, but she was also paired with Bugs Bunny in the one with Yosemite Sam, hair trim.
Yep.
And she was funny. So I gotta give a shout out to that.
A rubber mouse.
Of course, yeah. And as I understand it, she got a bit too busy, and that's why they replaced with June Foray, because Benaderet, her star was definitely rising further. Yeah. But there are 3 references here. 2 would probably go over many people. 1, maybe not so much because of a certain Disney film, but we'll go through them. So Tweety mentions
I'm Hopalong Cassidy.
Now, Hopalong Cassidy is a fictional cowboy hero in a series of novels where he's called Hopalong because he was shot in the leg and thus walked around with a little hop, which makes sense. But I was telling you this before we recorded, and you were surprised too, because I was just as shocked as anything. But between 1935 to 1948, so only a few years before this show was released, they made 66 films on the character. They were more kid-orientated than the novels, but wow, they must have really churned these things out.
Yeah, that just blows my mind. But back in the 50s, there's this kind of thing called B-movie serials. A lot of them were Westerns. They were, I would say, the equivalent of today's TV shows. And they would show after a movie, like on a Saturday matinee or something. You get the main feature, you get the cartoon and all that, and then you get a B-movie, like a shorter film on a lower budget that was usually a Western or something like that. And I just didn't realize they'd made that many with Hopalong Cassidy. And, of course, one of the great pun titles that Warner Brothers ever did in cartoons was a Roadrunner cartoon in Hopalong Casualty.
Yeah, there you go. So there's one trivia for a future one already, but I'll definitely have to repeat that for that, for sure. But Granny mentioned...
You didn't count on Pocahontas, did you, Geronimo?
Geronimo was a leader of the, and I'll have to spell this because I really can't pronounce it, but it's Ndendahe Apache people. Okay, I don't want to butcher it.
He was a real advocate for his people at the time during the American expansion west, and he ended up becoming a U.S. military term as well. In terms of bravery, when somebody jumps out of an airplane or something, that's named after him.
Time to hit the old silk.
And then the other one that they mention is Pocahontas, who was, of course, they made a whole Disney movie that was wildly historically inaccurate about her, but also an ambassador for Native Americans. And a funny thing here is that gag, that whole sequence with the Native American cowboys and Indians deal was cut on TV in the U.S. for a lot of years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they just completely chopped it out. And it happened, I think, sometime in the mid-'90s, and it lasted for several years anyway, where they were really sensitive to Native American stereotypes, and which was really ironic because there was much later Sylvester and Tweety that was a cheater cartoon that used that very clip, and they didn't cut that. So you saw it in another cartoon, which was weird. And one thing we also have to mention is that this cartoon is really well known because, I'm going to say a couple of decades, it was mistakenly thought to be in the public domain. So that meant that anybody and their grandpa could throw it on a VHS and sell it at the local dollar store. And it was on numerous compilations of public domain Christmas cartoons. So a lot of people saw this one when maybe they wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
Yeah. The weird thing is, I never saw this one before actually seeing it on the Looney Tunes Gold Collection Volume 2. I don't know why. Maybe it's just a luck thing. I just never watched it when it popped up on Cartoon Network or whatever at the time. It's just interesting how they can get that part all wrong with the public domain sometimes. I think a few shorts are in that boat.
Yeah, but I think it probably did the short a favor because people remember it. It was certainly an inspiration to the folks who created, in the 90s, the Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries series. This dynamic between Sylvester and Tweety and the bulldog, who would later be named Hector. So that really starts with this cartoon. I know we did another one with Sylvester and Tweety where they're on the train. It's Sylvester. There's no Granny yet in that one. And now we've got the three of them together, and that kind of started that whole dynamic. Sylvester, Tweety, Hector, Granny.
Exactly. And there was one in 1951 where it had all those characters, but they never interacted in the same way they do as this short. So it's definitely correct that this is the first, that particular formula, which, in revisiting these Sylvester and Tweeties, I'm appreciating them a little bit more than I used to. I don't know. I was never into them before, so to speak, but now, they're not that bad.
These earlier ones where Tweety is still a relatively active character, they are really funny. I don't know that they're like some of the later ones, like in the late 50s, they start to get a little bit formulaic. They start to get a little bit more like the Roadrunner. And I love the Roadrunner, but they start to get a little bit tired as a series. Yes. And Sylvester ended up being pretty much the most diverse character that the studio ever had. He was involved in so many other stories that Sylvester and Tweety was just getting tired at the time. There were more interesting things to do with Sylvester. But here, this is the golden age of Tweety and Sylvester as a pairing with Granny and Hector also.
The good thing about this short, though, despite all that history and us talking about everything, it's a great short, though. And I think that's probably the most important thing. Even if you don't know any of those references we just mentioned or the history, it's a great short. And it's a wonderful Christmas one. And as you pointed out, it's directed by and voiced by
a couple of Jewish guys. I find something really charming about that. You know, Friz Freleng was Jewish, and Mel Blanc was also Jewish, and a lot of the animators and artists also were, and I think that's charming that they did a Christmas cartoon. And of course, gosh, look how many Christmas cartoons the Fleischer studio did, and they were Jewish. So it's okay. There's something to smile about with that. And I also have to wonder, too, in this cartoon, just in terms of its humor, where did all the other presents come from that are shown, and who are they for? If it's just Granny and her pets, is Granny just a little bit maybe nuts in the head a little bit and buys a bunch of presents for people that don't exist? I wonder.
Because it's funny that you mentioned that, because one thing I didn't notice is, first of all, Hector, the bulldog, I know he's not named here, but we'll call him Hector anyway.
He's in a present. He's in a box. Yeah.
And no noise, nothing.
Tweety is wrapped too. It's like, is she wrapping her pets and giving them to herself?
Yes, exactly. Especially with the dog, because the dog at some point would be probably whimpering to get out or whatever. And we shouldn't be looking at logic in these things, but whatever.
No, like what other animals or what else is in those other presents? I wish they.
Exactly, because Sylvester would have been probably maybe there was something else for him that he would have preferred, like some catnip or something. I don't know, but we'll never know.
Or a kangaroo, maybe.
Maybe. But speaking of logic, though, I like how Sylvester's logic is, you know what, I'm just going to swap these tags over and Granny will automatically just take the other present. It's just, where did you think that was going to lead? I don't know. It's nuts. But anyway. But some of the great parts in this short that I love how Sylvester responds to the narrator. You know,
you're just not whistling Dixie, brother.
You're just not whistling Dixie, brother, regarding waiting for a mouse. I absolutely love that delivery. And of course, it's weird that he's waiting for a mouse, and yet later on he gets a rubber mouse and he's not happy. But anyway.
Oh, that's the real thing. He can tell it's a rubber mouse. That's a lame gift. Like he wants a real mouse, and then he sees a real bird, and he's like, I'll take that.
My favorite bit of animation are the two bits where Sylvester, like the initial joy on Sylvester's face when he's the first one down and he swaps the gifts over. But my favorite bit of animation is when Granny comes down and you see how excited Sylvester is for the presents. So that's pretty much me on Christmas Day right there.
Oh, that's everybody. Yeah. To be the first one in the house to see what Santa's brought. That's great.
Yeah, he's just
Oh.
he's just jumping up and down with joy. That bit of animation is just it's so good.
Yeah.
Just his eyes and sweetly innocent. He's going to have a bird, of course, but anyway. And of course, the whole thing, kiss the little birdie. His
Yeah.
face, this whole sourpuss thing, pretty much any kid when you bring a mistletoe over to him, okay, come on, kiss your, kiss your
Yeah.
friend or whatever.
Yeah, and that was a bit that they did in Sylvester and Tweety. Of course, there's a cartoon called Catty Cornered, where Sylvester is trying to, quote, rescue Tweety from Rocky, the gangster.
Yeah.
And at the very end, they're like, oh, pose for a news photo, you heroic cat. You saved this bird. And of course, it's, oh, give him a kiss. And Sylvester promptly puts him in his mouth. His little birdie. And yeah, that's funny. But then where Hector actually swallows Sylvester, and Granny has to pick up Hector and smack him on the ass and make him spit him out.
Yeah, exactly. And we get the perfect rule of three as well. So we get, of course, Sylvester swallowing Tweety, stop,
Yeah.
and he spits him out. Then Hector does that to Sylvester, and then we get the finale of that where Sylvester swallows Tweety and Hector swallows Sylvester, and of course we got the three, the beautiful rule
Yeah.
of three right there.
Yeah,
Which works
yeah.
beautifully.
And then the very end of the cartoon, where Granny is just sitting at the piano and they sing Hark the Herald Angels Sing with slightly reworked lyrics. And they're sitting there. I love the expressions on Sylvester and Hector both, because they both got a stamp over their mouth.
Yes.
So they can't bite each other or anything. And Tweety's just sitting there in the middle looking sarcastically angelic.
Yes. And of course the delivery of Mel Blanc with the whole muffled. Beautiful, beautiful. And speaking of delivery, one of my favorite lines here is the whole.
Shish kebab.
Just that delivery is
On the end of the bow and arrow. Yeah.
exactly.
Shish kebab.
Yeah, exactly. But we got two really funny bits in regards to breaking the laws of physics, where, of course, one of them is the hook lifting the cage gag. Like, he's lifting the cage up, and, of course, we've got the dynamite in the middle. He lifts it up, and it explodes. You'd think the whole thing would explode, but no. It's just half of it. But then he puts it nicely back. I just like that nice little gentle thing. But the bigger thing about the breaking laws of physics, that toy claw, when, we eventually lifts up Granny, that's some powerful toy.
It's like a toy crane.
Yeah.
And it picks up Granny, and Granny, like, where did Granny get that broom? Did she just instinctively know that he was going to do that, to whack him with the broom?
Yeah.
She wasn't carrying a broom before, was she? No, she was just sitting in her chair, knitting. And then all of a sudden, she's got a broom. She knew what was going to happen.
Exactly. But my goodness, what a cartoon.
And again, I think Sylvester was probably the most diverse and interesting character that the Warner Brothers studio ever had. And it just keeps going from here. Sylvester dominates from the 1950s on in terms of some of the best cartoons the studio did.
Yep, exactly. And McKimson now stops using his alternate cat, ending in 1951, so he starts using Sylvester more in all different roles, and of course as a father figure to Sylvester Jr. So yeah, definitely a diverse character, and one of my favorites as well. But as for a rating for this short, I'm going to give this one a 9. Look, it's not a go-to short, but man, it's funny. It is so good, and this might actually become a Christmas staple in my household now that I appreciate it more.
I'd say a solid 9 out of 10. It's a Christmas classic. It's a great cartoon. It's a great Sylvester and Tweety cartoon. It's a great Friz Freleng cartoon. It's a great Christmas cartoon. Yeah, I'd say 9 out of 10 for sure.
Yep, definitely. We're both in agreement on that, but wow. So that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care. And if this is playing during Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Christmas comes but once a year. Joyous Yuletide bells are pealing.